Hello, my name's James Patterson and welcome to this video tutorial. I'm going to show you how to create this flaming car effect. We'll use an image of a car and a skyline here and lots of different images of fire and combine them all using blend modes and transform controls and come up with something that looks like this. So let's just hit space to exit our full screen mode in Bridge there, and we'll go ahead and open up our flaming car before JPEG into Photoshop. So first of all, we need to make a selection that will isolate the car from the background. So let's grab the quick selection tool over here in the tools panel, and I can paint with this tool to form a selection around the car, and you can see the tool does a fairly good job of guessing the edges where I want to include the car but not the background. So I'm just dabbing away with the tool here, doing a fairly rough job of it, but we can always fine-tune that later. And you can see I've gone over the background here. I can hold Alt and that will allow me to subtract areas from my selection, just like this. So I think we've got a fairly decent selection there. I'm going to go to Refine Edge now, and this will allow me to fine-tune that selection to get me a much nicer finish. Now it's worth experimenting with the settings to get the right combination that works for you. I'm going to check Smart Radius, and then we'll bring Radius up to about 2.1. This sets the area in which the refinement will work around the edge of the shape. And then let's bring Smoothness up to about 10. Let's bring Contrast up to about 10 as well. 11, that's fine. Bring Shift Edge back to about -20. And then let's choose Output to New Layer with Layer Mask. Let's hit OK to apply that. And you can see this will give me a new layer with a mask. Let's click on the layer mask thumbnail here in the layers panel to make sure we're working on the mask rather than the image. Then we can use the brush tool to add to that mask or subtract from it. So we can paint with black to hide areas or white to reveal them. Let's hit D to reset our colours so we have white as our foreground colour. We can then flip between white and black with X. So with white, let's just paint over this area here. You can see where my initial quick selection missed out that headlight there, so we can paint over that area to reveal it. Let's zoom in a little bit and have a look around. You can see at the top of the car here looks a bit messy. I can hit X to flip to black, and then we'll resize my brush using the bracket keys and then paint over that area to clean it up around here. There's a bit of the wheel here that's missing, so let's flip to white again and then paint to reveal that area there. So let me just pause the video while I continue working around the image here. You can see at the bottom here there's a little bit of work to be done, and I'll come back to you when I'm finished. So here you can see I've worked on the mask with the brush tool just to really tidy up those edges. So let's just whiz around. You can see it's a lot cleaner now. I've also chosen to get rid of the spoiler at the back of the car. I think it looks a little bit messy, so we could do without it. So let's just zoom back out. Now I think we're going to need a little bit more room to work with, so let's grab the crop tool. Let's just hit clear to clear all of these boxes, and then let's click and drag around our whole image there to form our box. Then we can drag outwards. Let's hit Command or Control and minus to zoom out slightly, and I'm just going to drag outwards on these sides to give us a little bit more room to work with. Let's hit enter to apply that. Next, let's choose a colour for our background. So let's click on the background here. Let's click the eye icon to reveal it. And then let's go to Edit, Fill. And then we can choose Use Colour. So bring up our colour picker here. And we want to choose a nice deep brown colour. Something around here I think will look good. Let's hit OK to apply that. Then hit OK again. And you can see that's filled my background with that deep brown colour. Next we want to adjust the position of the car, so let's click back on our car layer here at the top. In fact we could rename it as car layer, so let's just click where it says background copy and call it car. Let's just make our layer slightly smaller there. Then we can use the move tool, make sure we have auto select, group and show transform controls checked up here in the options. This gives us our bounding box. and then we can click and drag to move the car around. We can also click on the bounding box here to enter transform mode. So while in transform mode, I can right click and then choose flip horizontal, so we have the car facing the other way. I can also, if I hover over the corner here, this gives me my rotate icon there, and I can click and drag to rotate the car slightly. So I think maybe something like that would look good. Let's hit enter to apply. Okay, so let's just zoom in slightly so you can see this more clearly, because we're going to apply a filter now to our car layer that will dramatically change the image. So let's go to filter, stylize, and find edges. And then if we press Command or Control and I, that will invert the colors. And you can see we have the beginnings of our glowing line effect. Now let's go to the blend mode options here in the layers panel, and let's choose lighten. Then we need to do some work on the layer mask again to tidy up the effect. So let's click on the layer mask thumbnail here in the layers panel to highlight it. Let's grab the brush tool with black as our foreground color. We'll zoom in slightly. And then I'm going to paint over any distracting elements such as the writing here to get rid of it. And you can be fairly loose about this because we're going to apply so many filters and effects on top that it doesn't really matter if the painting is a little bit rough. And of course, as it's all layer masked, we can tidy it up later if needs be. I'm also going to tone down this area here on the bumper where you can see it's gone a little bit bright. So let's grab the burn tool over here in the tools panel. Let's click on our image part of the layer here. So this square box here is selected now. And then let's choose range highlights, exposure around 20% there. And then I'm going to whiz over this area here with the tool just to tone down the bright areas. Let's zoom out slightly and see how we're looking. I'm going to pause the video just while I continue working over this mask. You can see we have a thin line here around the edge where the selection hasn't quite grabbed the whole of the image, so I'm going to remove that and also get rid of all of the writing. So I'll come back to you shortly. And here you can see where I spent a few more minutes just tidying up that car. So now let's duplicate our car layer with Command or Control and J. Then let's change the blend mode of our copy to screen. And we're going to apply blur to this top layer. So let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Let's set the radius to about 2 pixels. It's okay. Then let's press Command or Control and J again to create another copy. Also set to screen. And then let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur again. And we'll set the radius to 4 this time. Let's hit OK to apply that. Next we're going to create a group that will house all of our car layers. So let's click on the Create Layer Group icon here at the bottom of the Layers panel. Let's double click on the name there and just call this Car All. And then we can house all of our car layers in this group. So I'm just going to make my panel a little bit larger there. Let's click on our top layer, then hold Shift and click on the lowest car layer, then click and drag up to our Car All group. Now let's just add a levels adjustment that will tone down these lighter areas that we've created by using the screen blend mode. So let's click on the add adjustment layer icon here in the layers panel. Let's choose levels and then let's just drag the black point slider inwards just to tone down those lighter areas. Next let's add another adjustment layer that will alter the colours. So let's just click back on our layers tab here. Then let's click again on the adjustment layer icon here at the bottom of the layers panel and choose hue saturation. Now let's check colorize, and then we can drag the hue slider to alter the colors. So we want a nice warm fiery color, so something around there looks pretty good I think. Let's bring the saturation up a little bit to maybe about 50. And there we go, a nice warm fiery color. Now we want these adjustment layers that we've created here to apply to our car layers, but not to the background. And we can do this by changing the blend mode of our car all group. You can see at the moment, if I click on it, we're set at pass through. If I just change that to normal, you can see that restores the color of my background. Now I think we're just about ready to start adding some fire. So let's go back into Bridge, and I have my fire and smoke folder here. Let's just open up our Fire 1 JPEG, and we'll just use the lasso tool to draw a very loose selection around the area of the flames here. Then let's grab the move tool, and I can click and drag to drag the fire upwards towards my flaming car before tab at the top here. Then if I hold and drag down into the screen and release, that will drop my fire selection onto a new layer. I want this layer outside of my car all group, so I'm going to click it and drag it up to the top here. You can see where I can place it there. Let's just double click on the name there and call this rear fire. Now we can use a blend mode to blend the fire in with our image, so let's click on the blend mode drop down here and choose lighten, and then we can use the transform controls. If I just hover over the edge of the box here, let's click and drag to rotate the fire, and we can position it where we want it. So we can also resize it slightly, and I think we'll have it coming out the back of the car around here. So while still in transform mode, I can right click and then let's choose warp, and this will allow me to fine tune the position and the shape of the fire to get it looking exactly how I want it. We can kind of mold it to the contours of the car. Just like this. Let's zoom in a little bit. And I want it kind of curving around slightly, so I think that looks good. Let's hit enter to apply that. And then we'll use a layer mask to blend the fire in. So let's click the add layer mask icon here at the bottom of the layers panel. Let's grab the brush tool again with black as our foreground color, a nice soft edge circular brush. And then we can just paint to blend the fire in. You can see I've gone over a little bit there, so let's hit X to flip to white and then paint to reveal that fire there. Hit X again to flip to black, and then just work over the wing mirror here to reveal that. And then from here on, it's just a case of adding more fire in exactly the same way. So let's quickly add another piece of fire to the front of the car here. Let's go back into Bridge, and you can see I have lots of different fire images here. Let's open up Fire 7. Again, let's use the lasso tool just to make a very rough selection around the fire. Then let's grab the move tool, click and drag up to our image and then down into the image. Let's change the blend mode again to lighten. Zoom out slightly, and then we'll use the transform controls to once again mold the shape of the fire. Let's right click and choose warp again and bend slightly to kind of go with the shape of the bumper here. And you can see the great thing about working with fire is that we don't need to worry about constraining the proportions or shifting the shape too much. We can just bend or mold it into any shape we like, really. Let's hit enter to apply, and then let's add another piece of fire. So back into Bridge, let's open up Fire 8. Once again, let's draw a lasso selection. Let's use the move tool again to drag it into our image. Again, change the blend mode to lighten. Zoom out, grab the bounding box, shift inwards, and you can see how this is working. So I'm just going to pause the video while I continue to add this fire effect. I'll come back to you when it's complete. And here you can see I've added lots more fire using exactly the same technique. You may have noticed I've grouped all of my fire layers into a group here. Let's just expand my layers panel so you can see how they're all working. I can flick a few on or off to show you. So I've changed the blend mode of some of these layers to screen just to intensify the fire in certain areas. Screen just gives you a slightly brighter finish than lighten. Next, let's add some smoke. So let's just make my layers panel slightly smaller there. Then let's go back into Bridge, and you can see I have a smoke image here. So smoke 1 JPEG. Let's open this into Photoshop. Let's grab the lasso tool again because we're going to add the smoke in much the same way as we added the fire. Grab the move tool, click and drag up to our image, then down in and release. Let's change the blend mode to lighten again, and then use the transform controls to reshape our smoke. Let's have it coming out the back here as well, I think would look good. Let's right click and choose warp again, just to fine tune the positioning. Hit enter to apply, and then once again add a layer mask and use the brush tool with black as our foreground colour to just tone down the effect in areas where we don't want it working. With our smoke we can be a bit more creative with the colours, so let's just click on the image thumbnail here in the layer, and then let's press Command or Control and U to bring up our hue saturation dialog box. We can check colorize again, and this time choose a different colour for our smoke. So you can choose any colour you like. I think actually the first colour here was working quite well, so let's just bring the saturation up slightly. Quite like that kind of purpley colour. Let's hit OK to apply that, and maybe I'm just going to just transform to make it slightly smaller like that. Let's hit enter to apply, and then I'm going to continue to add smoke in exactly the same way. So let me pause the video again and I'll come back to you when I'm done. And there we go, you can see I've added lots more smoke using exactly the same technique. Let's just open up my smoke group there. You can see that there are all my smoke layers all transformed and shaped around the car. And let's just toggle that layer on or off. You can see how that group of layers there is working. Next, let's add a road. So first of all, let's just hide our smoke and fire layers. This will help us to see where we want to position our road. Now let's grab the pen tool over here in the tools panel, and I'm just going to click and then click and drag to start to form a curved line like this. So it doesn't need to be too elaborate. Something like that looks good, I think. Now let's grab the brush tool, and the settings we apply here will be used to stroke our path. So with our brush tool selected, let's just go to our layers panel. We'll click and add a new layer at the top of our stack, and then actually we're going to drag this down behind our car all group here, so it's sitting just above our background layer. Let's double click and call it road, and then with our brush tool selected, let's choose white as our foreground color, and then let's go into our brush options here. We want a hard edge brush, something like that. Let's toggle on our brush panel here in the options bar, and let's just bring spacing down to 1%. Let's bring hardness down slightly to about 80. Now let's close our brush panel there. And we're not going to do any painting with our brush. We're just going to use the size of it to stroke our path. So let's just use the bracket keys to give us a slightly larger size. Something like that, I think, will look good. And then let's go back to our pen tool, then right click and choose stroke path. Now we can choose a tool, so we want to use the brush tool. Let's uncheck simulate pressure, hit OK to apply that, and you can see how that stroked my path. Now I'm going to use another tool to get rid of the middle section here, so let's click on the eraser tool this time, and again let's choose a brush size. So using the bracket keys again, I want this brush size to be about half the width of my white line there. And then let's go back to our pen tool, then let's right click again, let's choose stroke path again. This time let's choose tool eraser, let's hit OK, and you can see how that's gotten rid of the middle section of my line there. Now we don't need our path any longer, so let's hide it with Command or Control Shift and H. Then let's grab the move tool, and once again we're going to use the transform control. So let's click on the bounding box, then right click inside and choose perspective. Then we can drag the top inwards and the bottom outwards like this. Let's just hit enter to apply that, and then let's just squeeze it slightly so that it's kind of a little bit smaller, more road-like. And then we can right click and choose warp again just to fine tune the overall position like this. So you can get this looking exactly how you want it. I think that's looking okay. Let's hit enter to apply that. and then we'll just use a layer mask to tidy up the road just in the parts of the car where we don't want it showing through. So grab the brush tool with black as your foreground color again on the mask. Make sure you're painting with the mask thumbnail highlighted. Just paint over those areas there to hide the road. Next, let's add our skyline. So we'll go back into Bridge and we have our skyline JPEG here. Let's just open this, and we're only really interested in the shape of the sky there. So let's grab the Magic Wand tool over here in the Tools panel. With tolerance set to around 45, let's click over the sky, then hold Shift and continue clicking to add to our selection. And there you go. You can see very quickly we've got our selected area. Now, inside the selection, you can see I have this icon here with the arrow and the rectangle. That means I can click and drag that selection. I'm going to drag it up to my flaming car before JPEG, then down into the image and release. Then I can move that selection around just by dragging it again. Now we want to add a new layer at the top of our layer stack, so let's click on our smoke group there, then click the Create New Layer icon, and then let's call this layer Skyline. Now I want to just add a finishing touch to this selection here, so let's just zoom in a little bit closer with Command and Control and plus, hold space to move around, and I'm going to grab the rectangular marquee tool here and just hold Shift and drag to add a thin line that kind of comes down towards our road there, just to give the impression that that road is kind of coming from a gap there. Let's zoom out slightly, and then we want to just paint in big blobs in this selection to give the impression of a skyline. So let's first of all just reveal our smoke and fire layers again. Then let's grab the brush tool. Let's hold Alt to sample a colour. So we'll choose a nice deep red from our fire there, like that. Then with a soft edge circular brush, something like this one, let's just use the bracket keys to make our brush size nice and large. Just going to dab over with the brush tool like this to bring out the shape of the sky there. Then let's choose another colour with holding Alt, and let's use a deeper red this time, something like that. Let's just click again with a slightly smaller brush size, just to give some definition to our light. And then let's choose a lighter colour, holding Alt again and selecting from the flames, and just paint in a few more dabs like this. Now we can press Command and Control and D to deselect our skyline, and there you can see we have a nice glowing cityscape in the background. Now as a finishing touch, we're going to add some sparks. So let's click the Create New Layer icon here in the Layers panel to add a new layer at the top of our layer stack. We'll call this layer Sparks. Then with the brush tool still selected, let's click on the brush panel settings here in the options bar. And let's check brush tip shape. Let's bring the spacing up to about 200. Something around there is fine. Let's check shape dynamics. We'll bring the size jitter right up to 100%. And then let's check scattering. And we'll bring the scattering up to about 600%, somewhere around there, I think. Let's just toggle that off. And then we'll hold Alt again to select a colour. Let's choose a nice bright orange. I think somewhere around there would look good. And then simply paint around the back of our car, just like this, to add a few glowing sparks that are kind of coming out the rear. And there we go, that's our finished effect. Thanks very much for watching.